that will be deeply felt throughout the country and by countless people around the world. Coming to the throne at just 25 years of age, Queen Elizabeth II was the rock on which modern Britain was built, and has since both grown and flourished. The Queen lived an extraordinary life of service. For over 7 decades, she was the nation's source of strength and comfort, reflecting our common values and beliefs. Her words of wisdom gave us strength in the most testing times, loved and admired by people across the UK and around the world. Her remarkable legacy will endure the test of time. Her extensive travels during the extraordinary 70-year reign saw the Queen visit Hackney on at least 9 occasions, which many here will remember. While we mourn her deeply, our thoughts turn also to the whole of the royal family and to King Charles III, who is now tasked with taking the remarkable legacy forward. I ask you, therefore, to rise if you're able and join me in 1 minute silence in memory of Her Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II. Thank you. Please be seated. This meeting of the Council is being conducted in person and in accordance with the Council's protocol for meetings following the death of the monarch. The agenda for this evening is now very different to what we originally planned, and members will have received the revised agenda. We now only have 2 substantive items on the agenda, and the first, Standards Committee Annual Report, is to be considered without discussion as per the protocol. A written response will be provided to all members of the public and councillors who have submitted questions. These responses will be circulated with the minutes of this meeting. All other items of business have been deferred to the next council meeting or to the relevant appropriate meeting. As advised on the agenda, if we have not concluded this evening's business by 8:30 p.m, there'll be a break in proceedings between 8:30 p.m. to 8:45 p.m. During this time, male and female prayer rooms will be available for use on the ground floor in rooms 58 and 63. Finally, can I please remind all members contributing this evening of the requirement to stand when addressing the meeting and also to use your microphones to ensure you're heard on the live stream. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. Apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Adejare, Councillor Joseph, Councillor Potter, Councillor Rathbone, Councillor Rout, Councillor Hayhurst, Councillor Palace, Councillor Pafor. I have apologies. Any other apologies? Thank you. Are there any other apologies, lateness or absence? Yeah. Okay. Any others? No? Thank you. Agenda item 2, declarations of
Just
interest.
to let you know,
Members are asked to note the guidance on declaring interest as set out in the agenda. Are there any declarations of interest relating to any item on the agenda? If so, could members please declare it now, indicating which item it relates to and the nature of the interest? Councillor Bingley.
I'd just like to declare other registrable interest. I'm a member of the campaign group Republic, who would like to abolish the institution of the monarchy and replace it with a democratically elected head of state. So that applies to most of this meeting.
Okay, thank you. Noted. Any others? Yes. Deputy Mayor Bramble.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just to declare that I am Deputy Chairman of Local Government Association, and some of the procedures in standards have adopted the protocol, although I was not in overseeing the protocol. Just want to highlight highlight that.
Noted. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bramble. Are there any others? No, thank you. Agenda item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. I have not received notice of any points of accuracy on the minutes. Can we therefore agree the minutes of the previous meeting of Council held on 20th July 2022 as a true and accurate record of proceedings? Councillor. Is this a matter of accuracy? If not, I'm moving on to the next agenda item.
It's on page number 20.
Councillor, please stand.
Sorry about that. It's page number 20, and the meeting resumed at 9:39. Afterwards, it says Councillor Krautwit, Lisse, Papier, and Steinberger left the meeting at the commencement of the adjournment. Now, there were other councillors that also left at that time. It appears only the Conservative councillors have been pointed out. I don't want to go into accusations, but either it's deleted or the others are added as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. That'll be looked into. If that is accurate, I'm sure will be changed. Thank you so much. Moving on to agenda item 4, Standards Committee Annual Report. Council has before it the Standards Committee Annual Report for 2021 to 22 for noting. Can Council please note the report? Thank you very much. Agenda item 5, the elected mayor's statement. As members know, this item enables the elected mayor to make a statement with opposition group leaders given an opportunity to respond. However, in order to enable all those members who wish to pay tribute to the late Queen to be able to do so, I would like to suggest that we suspend those council procedures rules relating to debates within Rule 17 and the Mayor's Statement, Rule 8. Councillor Adam, are you proposing that motion? Thank you, Councillor Adam. Councillor Sizer, are you seconding the motion? Thank you, Councillor Sizer. Is that agreed? Thank you. I intend to ask Mayor Glanville to make a statement in the usual manner, following which the opposition group leaders will have an opportunity to respond should they wish to do so. Therefore, I will call on individual members of the council. I will then ask Mayor Glanville if he wishes to reply. Mayor Glanville, would you like to make your statement?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. May I start by taking this opportunity to thank you for the impeccable job you did on Sunday at our proclamation ceremony alongside our Deputy Lieutenant. You both led a solemn and powerful and poignant event, both remembering our late Queen and looking to the future. And I'd just also like to thank all the council staff that since the announcement of Her Majesty's death have mobilised around our response. Can I extend your own welcome to Deputy Lieutenant Stephen Howlett, who is now our King's representative, to council colleagues, officers and residents watching at home. This is a unique council meeting, what I'm sure will be one of the most extraordinary weeks in our lives. Each individual, each community and each identity represented in this chamber and in our borough will view the Queen's death, her reign and the new King differently. And that is welcome and that's what makes us happy. Last Thursday, the sadness of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth's passing was felt not only in the UK and the Commonwealth, but throughout the world. It's a sense of mournful reflection which has continued and grown in the days that followed as we have absorbed the news and what it means to us, our borough and our country. I saw it firsthand today in central London during the procession to Westminster Great Hall. Madam Speaker, I suppose you can take from that I have a deep personal respect for the late Queen and the role of a constitutional monarchy. Her dignity, her influence, style and unstinting public service from her oath to the Commonwealth to her last act, asking her new Prime Minister to form a government, illustrate that perfectly. For me, it started young. Sadly, I wasn't born during the Silver Jubilee, but my first memories were being taken out of school by my mum and her sneaking us off to Windsor for a royal occasion. I was loud, fidgeting and chatty, waving a plastic Union Jack. This attracted a TV crew, which wasn't the best when you're supposed to be at school, and there were some extremely difficult questions the next day when I went back to school after my royal adventure. I never met the Queen, but I did get the chance to meet the late Queen Mother while at university at Cumberland Lodge and a chance visit to church on Sunday. What she made of me as an extremely hungover student, who knows? But she asked me if I was a fan of Harry Potter. I said no, I'd not read the books, and with a cheeky look, she said, "You're never too old to start." I promised I would, and sadly, I have never kept that promise. But I did keep a promise to pay my respects to her. She laid in state only a few months later in 2002. My mum and I were reunited outside Buckingham Palace for the Golden Jubilee. I returned for the wedding of now Prince and Princess of Wales and celebrated both the Diamond and Platinum Jubilees. Unlike some in the chamber, I've never met the Queen, but as Mayor, I've welcomed other members of the royal family to Hackney, from showcasing our fantastic new council housing at King's Crescent, to our record of investment in young people and the Duke of Edinburgh Awards, to our role as a creative hub for East London's economy. Each time I was proud and felt reflected back a keen interest from our royal visitors and a connection to the work of so many residents and organisations in our borough. We're but halfway through a period of national mourning, and I'm pleased that tonight we're pausing in the civic heart of Hackney to remember. It's worth remembering, as you said, Madam Speaker, that the Queen was young and never meant to be our monarch. Without the abdication crisis, we'd have had a very different history of the crown. But she became our longest serving monarch, a constant in our lives, and many of us have never known another king or queen. And like her husband, the Duke of Edinburgh, who we paid tribute to last year, she was a moderniser. She was behind the coronation being televised, brought the Christmas message to our homes. She jumped out of planes with James Bond and recently obviously appeared with Paddington Bear. She was a modern royal, opening up the royal family to the country and to the world. She defined modern Britain and cemented that second Elizabethan age as era-defining. She was also a link to multiple generations. As Britain changed, she evolved, but she also remained a constant. And I think that is why she plays a special part in Hackney. Our borough is different. It's very different to when she ascended the throne in 1952, or even when she joined us for her Silver Jubilee in 1977. Throughout her reign, Hackney became younger and more diverse, vibrant, just as modern Britain has. And she was there to see Hackney grow, visiting Homerton Hospital, Stoke Newington, Jeffrey Museum, Kingshold Estate. Perseverance Works, not as a modern Shoreditch workplace, but in 1991 when her handbags were made there. She was a keen sponsor of St Joseph's Hospice, and she visited all three metropolitan boroughs during her Silver Jubilee. She's provided certainty and resonance throughout her 70-year reign, both in peace and in uncertainty. She, like her parents, were a beacon in our darkest hour during the Second World War, and earlier this year at the Platinum Jubilee, she was still inspiring new generations with her quiet dignity and commitment to public service. Madam Speaker, I said on Sunday that Hackney isn't a borough of royal palaces, military bases, or obvious links to the monarch. Nor, let us be honest, is it a borough of deference or always natural support for the crown or the monarch. In fact, quite the reverse. In Hackney, we are often radicals, dissenters, non-conformists, anti-colonialists, anti-racist campaigners, and yes, proud Republicans. Through the centuries, they have lived, been welcomed, worshipped, debated, and challenged in our borough. And today, I'm sure many of our residents have not been marking Her Majesty's passing. Madam Speaker, I and we must recognise that history. Some of those traditions I share, others I don't, but they are noble lineage, not of kings and queens, but ordinary and extraordinary people and their descendants have just as much right to protest in our open liberal democracy enshrined by our constitutional monarchy, and it must be upheld. But those other traditions haven't stopped residents in our borough pausing and paying tribute to the Queen, nor sharing their memories of her visits, or those of other members of the royal family, or indeed their own connections to the monarch. The relationship between the Crown and the imperial past is rightly debated and contested, especially here in Hackney. For some, the Queen represented the mother country, the Commonwealth, a place to build a new life or find sanctuary as a refugee. For others, it was just the reverse. And we know, as former Councillor Patrick Vernon has written, that the new king will have his work cut out to define how he sees these views and establish his new reign. The Queen herself was not unaware of these challenges, and I think we have seen through the tributes played in Scotland and Northern Ireland that she used her dignity and soft power to build bridges with those that did not recognise her tradition. Being a diverse borough, we also have hundreds of residents who have come to this building as new citizens, and even in this room become citizens of our country, swearing their oath of allegiance, and they will have their own unique personal connection to her and citizenship. In the past few days, both at our proclamation event and the memorial at City Hall, we have seen what the Queen has meant to those of faith and none. She's been head of the Church of England, a guarantee of sanctuary for Jews. I've heard powerful statements from imams and kind words from Sikhs and Hindus paying tribute, as well as those from the Humanist Association. As a London borough, we have a civic duty to take part in the remembrance of a sovereign and the accession of another. As this room attests, she hangs proudly on our walls and gave us our founding charter. Our legal authority is given to us by the Crown via Parliament, and we have a mace to represent that authority during council meetings. You, Madam Speaker, as our first citizen of the borough, along with the Deputy Lieutenant, represent that non-partisan role in our democracy. That non-political civic duty is a tradition that is rooted in our democracy, in the role of Speaker and civic mayors across the country. These roles remind us as politicians that we are not the only representative of our people or our residents. The Mayor of London also said yesterday at the tributes in City Hall that she helped embody that more in common bond between us, that she was more than those that divide us, and represented that total sum of our history and all of our endeavours. She reigned through 18 general elections, 15 prime ministers, 16 local elections in Hackney, which I'm sure she followed just as intently as those national events. She leaves behind us plaques, buildings, and of course the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park. Madam Speaker, as we turn to a new chapter, and as we've done over the past few days, I extend both on behalf of the Council and our borough heartfelt condolences to the royal family and especially our new King. We join them in grieving for their personal loss, and we wish His Majesty Charles III a long and happy and successful reign. He follows in the footsteps of his mother and assumes the duties and responsibilities of sovereign. His inspiring speeches on Friday night and at his accession are already starting to define his approach to the crown. While there is much that is new and confusing, his commitment to the country and to public service is undimmed. On Friday, the King pledged to serve the people of this country, whatever their beliefs. Earlier this year, he also spoke about his commitment to defend liberal democracy, human rights, and open societies, values that we in Hackney share and hold dear. As Prince of Wales, his unwavering commitment to the environment, which now defines so much of our political discourse, was way ahead of his time. And as he moves into a different constitutional role, I hope, as he suggested, that the new Prince of Wales will continue that activism on the environment, reducing poverty, creating opportunities for young people, as he too defines his new role. Both the King and the Prince of Wales have shown through their visits to Hackney just that commitment. From international aid to tackling HIV stigma, they have been here and they have come to
Please
Hackney.
conclude, Mayor Glanville.
Again, showing the power that the non-partisan role that can play in our politics. I would also like to say that we can have no better advocate for Hackney than the new Queen Consort, but Camilla holds a unique position as being a proud owner and wearer of our cherished I Love Hackney badge. I'm sure Hackney will support and challenge the King in equal measure as he takes our country monarchy forward to a new era for the country and for our borough. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and God save the King.
Thank you, Mayor Glanville. I now invite Councillor Levi to respond.
So, start with, I'd like to echo the Mayor's sentiments and on the impeccable way that you conducted a proclamation ceremony on Sunday together with our new Deputy Lieutenant in the best traditions of Hackney, I would say, and we're all very, very moved and touched by the ceremony, and thank you for that. It's very difficult within a short time allotted to me to pay a fitting tribute to
Councillor
Her late
Levi, could you
Majesty.
please speak into the mic?
Sorry?
Could you please speak into the mic?
Sorry, apologies.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, it's very difficult within the short time allotted to me to pay a fitting tribute to Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. It's difficult Because how can one reasonably articulate in a few short moments to describe a lifetime of her late Majesty's devoted and faithful service to her peoples everywhere, both in the United Kingdom and throughout the Commonwealth of Nations? The late Queen was at the heart of our national identity and a constant and reassuring presence at the centre of parliamentary democracy. Her Majesty was truly inspirational, and by an unfailing example throughout a reign that spans 7 decades. It's a really remarkable achievement. I was reminded of a speech made by the Queen in Cape Town in 1947 on the occasion of her 21st birthday, when the then Princess Elizabeth solemnly declared to the people of Great Britain and the Commonwealth that whether her life be long or short, it shall be devoted to your service. I say that we must be eternally grateful that the Queen was indeed granted a long and full life, devoted as she had pledged to the service of the nation and to the well-being of the Commonwealth that was so close to her heart. In December 2020, the then Prince of Wales, now of course King Charles III, paid a moving tribute on the passing of the previous Chief Rabbi, Lord Jonathan Sacks, a man who the King said was a trusted guide and a true and steadfast friend. I think it therefore entirely appropriate that I repeat here a teaching of Rabbi Sacks that I first quoted in this chamber actually more than 5 years ago, that underscores the exemplary attributes of a late Majesty. I quote, "To know you made a difference, that in this all too brief span of years, you lifted someone's spirits, relieved someone's poverty or loneliness, or brought a moment of grace or justice to the world that would not have happened had it not been for you. These acts are as close as we get to the meaningfulness of life, and they are matters of everyday rather than heroic virtue." Madam Speaker, these few short moving sentences encapsulates far better than I ever could how Her Majesty the Queen touched in the most meaningful way the lives of those fortunate enough to have met her. As the sun sets for the final time on the reign of our most beloved Queen, we pledge our unwavering allegiance to His Majesty King Charles III and pray that his reign be long and peaceful, with the comforting presence of the Queen Consort at his side. God save the King. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Councillor Levi. I now invite Councillor Garbutt to respond.
Thank you. We recognise the death of the Queen as a sad time for many people across the United Kingdom and across the world, and for many in Hackney. And we would like to just recognise and appreciate the work and response from the council staff and partners who've mobilised procedures during this period. We're also grateful to the council for trying to strike a balance between those who wish to mourn and those who have a variety of deeply held views. Queen Elizabeth witnessed many historic events during her long reign, including many countries formerly under British rule becoming independent and transitioning away from the monarchy. This began with Pakistan just 4 years after her coronation, and the last to become a republic was Barbados just last year. The Queen witnessed these changes with grace, just as she participated in the normalisation of relations with the Republic of Ireland following the Troubles. Her grace during these historic events is especially worthy of mention, considering Britain's difficult legacy in many of its former colonies. We hope that there will be space in the near future to deal with this legacy in a just and fair way. Many of these former colonies are experiencing its effects now, and we hope that during the period of reign of King Charles III, who describes himself as an environmentalist, we will see the action needed to protect the people and the planet. Many have spoken of the Queen's years of designated public service, which is why I believe that during this period of official mourning, she wouldn't want us to forget or neglect our duty to those who were worried about not being able to heat their homes or feed their children this winter. Finally, our sympathies are with the Queen's family and friends. Many people are mourning loved ones, and our thoughts are particularly with the family and friends of Chris Cabba, family and friends who are seeking answers following a fatal shooting by the police last week. The exceptional circumstances surrounding these deaths and others can be triggering, and grief can manifest in many ways. We hope we can, as a community, be there for each other and heal together. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Councillor Garbutt. I have received a list of 12 members who have indicated that they would like to speak. and I'll call on them in order and will then ask if there are any other members of the council who wish to contribute. Deputy Mayor Bramble.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the officers that have worked alongside the Mayor, myself and Deputy Mayor Nicholson in this time of mourning. Our thanks extend to you and deeply appreciated so that we could come together as a Hackney community. And it's been rightly said by the Mayor that we have the varying views of those that celebrate and embrace this time and reflect on her life and those that don't. And equally, we represent all of those people in the chamber tonight. I suppose some words that come to mind for me are nation, family and faith. Nation, we talk about women in leadership, Madam Speaker, and there you see someone 70 years. But what it shows is that when you hold the heart of people in the centre of all you do, that integrity transcends decades and you are able to relate to generation and it transcends time. Family, you could see surrounded by her family, the tributes that they played, it was so important. My late grandmother was also called Elizabeth. Betty to some, never to me, always grandmother or mum Bramble. So there was an affinity that I always felt when I saw her. And I suppose you'll hear over time lots of talk about how important her faith was to her. So, Madam Speaker, I take this opportunity to say I thank God for her life, her diligent service and hard work, all that she has held and meant to so many. And I ask God to bless all those who mourn her, especially those that not just because of the passing of our late beloved Queen, but also those that have lost loved ones at this time, who's mourned, and this grief will be quite overwhelming for them at this time. And I hope and pray that we'll come together as a nation, irrespective of our views, to support one another. And I know Hackney is the prime place that will demonstrate community spirit and love at this time. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bramble. Councillor Samatar.
Okay. One day I'll get the hang of this, Madam Speaker. I wanted to start off by sharing a bit of my reflection as somebody who, for many people like Hackney, when my family in this very building declared our citizenship to be accepted into this country, and the words included are in declaration to the Queen and our citizenship as people who are British. As I grew up and somebody living in Hackney, the world around me, from politics to society, constantly reminded us that we were not fully British. But under the eyes of Her Majesty, we were equal. And so today I join everybody who mourns her across the country and across our chamber. Madam Speaker, there's so much that I could say about everybody who I have spoken to that have told me their own version stories, but I know that every community has got a special connection where they felt welcomed and kindness from Her Majesty. We mourn with her family, we mourn with the nation and everybody who will miss her. She brought the world to our doorstep. 60% of visitors who come to this country are fascinated by places associated with her. So she wasn't a constant just in our identity, but the economic enrichment of the country as well. In closing, Madam Speaker, in her own words, she said, "I want to show the crown is not merely an abstract symbol of our unity, but a symbol and a personal connection between you and me. And may that bond be a living memory that lives through us, her subjects, in the family she left behind and the Commonwealth that she was a core foundation of." Madam Speaker, as a new era begins, I send warm wishes, deepest condolences, and pray for our new sovereign king. There's a lot to be said, but I think the most important thing is to focus on the best memories for us all to have as a community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Samatar. Councillor Lufkin. Fine. Okay. Moving on to the next person, Councillor Agundamuran.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to all of the council officers for the work they've been doing behind the scene. The Queen passing has been quite weird for me. When I say weird, it kind of feels like my grandma has passed away. I'm blessed in the sense that I come from two cultures, where I was born in the UK, but born to Nigerian immigrants. So I've got the Nigerian side as well as the British side. And from both of those cultures, we respect royalty. Now, since the Queen has passed, I've watched a lot of media, read a lot of articles, and it's been quite heartbreaking to see the division in society, where we should really be coming together. You've got people that are just trying to tear people apart and looking for negative things to say. Now, the Queen, like all of us, did not choose to be born who she was. She didn't have any choice about her sex. She didn't have any choice about her ethnicity or anything like that. But she decided to take on the duty of Queen and leave a lasting legacy. And what I would encourage all of us to do as councillors is ensure that we leave a lasting legacy in the work that we do, and we put our office before anything, to emulate the positive stuff that the Queen did in terms of bringing people together. And I would also like to send my condolences to the royal family on their loss of Her Majesty the Queen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gundamiran. Councillor Woodley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wanted to slightly take a break from the tributes to comment, if I may, on the experience of personal loss at a time of public mourning. So on Friday, I discovered completely unexpectedly that a close friend and near neighbour had died, no obvious cause, a few years younger than myself. And as I, in my shock, shared this news with friends and with colleagues, I discovered that they also had lost someone within recent days. And I became quite sensitized as I looked at the timelines and social media to others who were experiencing loss. And what a strange thing it was to have such a private and personal and sort of, stomach kind of blow at a time when there is such a sort of public performance of loss. We've also seen another version of public loss through the anguish shared by the parents of Chris Carver. And I've thought also of the last 2 years and the loss that we all shared, particularly keenly in Hackney, as we've seen friends, direct colleagues, staff members lost. And actually, as I come back to having more in-person meetings, I'm feeling that loss more keenly, because I'm going to rooms where community figures might once have been, and their absence is much more felt somehow now, that I somehow expect them to walk in, and yet they do not. But I did not want to just talk about loss, I also wanted to talk, Madam Speaker, about remembrance. A really special moment for me at the weekend when catching up with my partner's friend and his daughter was to hear that actually the stories do help. So whether it's a book of condolence, a letter, a shared comment, because sometimes when someone's experienced loss, the temptation is to avert the eyes and not to go towards someone because you simply do not want to say. But actually, sharing those stories do help. That is what I've been told. And I thought that was an important message to share tonight. And I hope that we can all think about the people that we have lost and to share the memory of them with the people that we know feel their loss still and hold them close to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Woodley. Councillor Desmond.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. When Queen Elizabeth II ascended the throne in February 1952, the world and Hackney were different places. During the 70 years of her reign, things have changed, evolved, developed faster than at any other time in history. Yet she remained constant. She was there to support people following the privations of World War II and there to lift our spirits during the COVID pandemic. In 1952, the Windrush generation had just started coming here, as had refugees from Nazi Germany, including a small number who survived the concentration camps. The Queen welcomed them, and as things developed into the Commonwealth, she made sure new independent countries could still benefit from stability and her wisdom as head of state. She dealt with joyous moments, such as when England won the World Cup in 1966, right up until the Lionesses winning the Euros this summer. And she coped with sadness. Who can forget the scene at Prince Philip's funeral the Queen sitting alone, complying with all regulations and wearing a mask. At Sabbath services of the United Synagogue, the largest synagogue body in Europe, led by the chief rabbi for 70 years, a prayer for the royal family has always been recited, beginning Our Sovereign Lady Queen Elizabeth. On many occasions in recent years, she's participated in Zoom meetings, which would have seemed like science fiction in the 50s, although such things were foreseen later in films like Barbarella and television programs like Prisoner. She evolved with the times, and despite being from, let's say, the upper echelons of society, helped us to move to a less class-ridden society when she became queen. Britain was a socially stratified society. You'd have a good idea which class a Hackney resident was just by looking at the clothes they wore. You can't tell today. In fact, when you see someone in fashionably torn jeans these days, it probably means they're from the upper class. We send our condolences to the royal family and hope the Queen will now rest in peace after an extraordinary life of service.
Thank you, Councillor Desmond. Councillor Sousa Range to read out Councillor Routh's statement.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have a statement here from Councillor Penny Root, which I would like to read out. I write now as someone who has never described herself as a monarchist, but who has nevertheless been influenced by the Queen throughout my life. As a small child growing up in what felt very much a man's world in the 1960s, I was quite bemused that the person who seemed most powerful in the world was a woman. The impact of that recognition can't be understated for women and men of my generation and afterwards. She may never have described herself as a feminist, but the Queen showed that when glass ceilings are removed, women are capable of rising to the challenges of any role. I think too that she set an example for anyone who seeks to offer their time for public service. Frankly, I find it incredible that she assumed such responsibilities at the age of just 25, and that just 2 days before she died, she was still working. Of course, she was very wealthy, but I have no doubt she made innumerable personal sacrifices which cannot be quantified financially in the course of her duties. She has provided the most powerful example of public service, a role model we can all keep in mind when the going gets tough. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I share Councillor Root's sentiments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sousa Range. Councillor Billington.
This is a time for memories, for sadness, and also for reflection on what has been and what is yet to be, what's constant and what changes, what we value and what we want to leave behind. The Queen was a constant in all of our lives, whatever we thought of the institution she represented. Being uninterested in or opposed to the monarchy didn't make her disappear. She carried on, being there, being visible. As she said herself, she had to be seen to be believed. She embodied things which are vital for a society to flourish. Constancy in a time of change, connecting us with generations before, a stability which allows us as a country to weather the winds of change with less harm and brutality than others. And that's key for me. I have no love of hereditary privilege. It's against all of my values and those of us on this side of the chamber. But the existence of a head of state whose interest is keeping the country stable and safe is something not all of our allies have or have had, and their experience of change and upheaval has been much more damaging. Our traditions in Hackney include the tradition of dissent. It is a testament to the strength of our institutions, like the monarchy, that they protect such dissent, even when it challenges those institutions. The best tribute to our late Queen is to protect the right to protest against the institution of the monarchy, even at this time of great mourning. A strong democracy can withstand and indeed flourishes with such dissent. We should cherish it just as we cherish our memories of street parties and flag waving and the photos of me dressed as Britannia in 1977 Silver Jubilee. In a uniquely British way, our Queen embodied these contradictions, enabled us to continue to question the institutions that protect us from extremes, dictatorship, and autocracy. This is more important now than it has been for decades. This is a tradition we will and must retain here in Hackney.
a borough of dissenters who love our country, a home for the world fleeing tyranny, full of Paddington Bears and their friends who politely fight for a better future.
Thank you, Councillor Linton. Councillor Race.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to say a few words on behalf of the residents of Hoxton East and Shoreditch, many of whom will be marking the loss of Her Majesty of the Queen in their own way over the next few days. Her Majesty visited Hackney on numerous occasions, as you all know, and in particular I wanted to note her visit to our ward in Shoreditch in 2004 to visit the Princess Foundation. However, we didn't need the Queen to be physically present to understand what she represented. From times of triumph to moments of difficulty, many of her residents have looked to Her Majesty as she spoke to us and sought to guide us. We remember especially the celebrations for the Platinum Jubilee this year, when we saw communities from across our ward come together in Hoxton Garden, on Pitfield Street and elsewhere across the ward to celebrate together. She provided us all a space to celebrate our national community together without partisan or cultural or sporting barriers, across communities and across generations. We could all choose to belong if we wanted to. We also remember this evening a very personal loss to a family, and especially to our son, King Charles, who now takes on this very special responsibility of bringing us together. In this new role, I know that all Hoxton and Shoreditch residents will wish him the very best. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Race. Councillor Etty to read out Councillor Rathbone's statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I read on behalf of Councillor Ian Rathbone. On her 21st birthday, April 21, 1947, the then Princess Elizabeth spoke on a national radio broadcast, making a profound royal pledge. I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and the service of our great imperial family to which we all belong. That's what we are hearing being quoted in the media. And she held to that for 70 years as Queen, devoted to your service. But the next thing she said in that very public speech is also significant, which says, God help me. That was, as it were, the secret of what the Queen did, of serving others. And she was well suited to take on another role of her office, Defender of the Faith. And the present King Charles III talks of being Defender of the Faith. She took on the challenges and she became a role model for many young men and women. And then later in life, she showed that elderly people can still make a contribution to the world around them, still have something of value to the community. She carried out her duty until her last day. She brought unity where there had been division in many different ways. I had the opportunity of meeting the Queen in 2015 when I was the Speaker for London Borough of Hackney in Buckingham Dagenham, and I sincerely echo that being the Defender of Faith, and I will say may her soul rest in peace and long live the King. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Councillor Etty. Councillor Fajana Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I was one of the many people who met the Queen, but without the opportunity to talk to her because of protocol. But I was pleased that I had the opportunity to sit next to her at the London Civic Lounge for the Diamond Jubilee in Walthamstow Town Hall back in 2012. The late Queen was an inspiration for me as a woman. She did both great and small things with great love. I'm sure many of us, Councillor Etty just read in Councillor Rathbone's statement, we've heard a few times since her passing, that speech she made at 21st in 1947 from South Africa to the Commonwealth. I am a child of the Commonwealth. When she said, I declare before all of you that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and the service of our great imperial family to which we all belong. She kept those words, dedicated her life to serve for over 70 years. Even in the face of death, just 48 hours before her death, she was still performing those duties. As a woman, I felt empowered by the Queen's dedication to service. And to colleague this evening, I want to, in particular, we women, to emulate our late Queen and continue to serve the people of Hackney with smiles and love in our heart. I hope our soul rests in peace and long live King Charles III. Thanks, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Councillor Fajan Thomas. Deputy Mayor Nicholson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm just going to cast my mind back about some 7 years, if I may, to a day with the sun shining in London. It was on the Mall, indeed, rather like today on the Mall. A bright sunshine, a warm afternoon, that hint of autumn in the air. Except for 7 years ago, of course, there was no tolling bell, there was no gun salute going on, there was no pomp or pageantry of any description going on, there were no flags off the flagpole. It was just a day in our great city, a regular day, with many of us going about our daily business from place to place. And there were people walking down the Mall. I was one of those people, doing one bit of business or another, going from one meeting to another. There were also some families out and about, enjoying the sunshine, enjoying the Mall and what it had to offer. And then down the middle comes this Rolls Royce. And in the back of the Rolls Royce sits the Queen and a lady in waiting. And she was laughing. The lady in waiting was laughing. They were clearly having a great conversation in the back of the car. There was no waving going on. There was no acknowledgement going on. Just two smiling women in the back of a car. And everybody along the Mall left with smiling faces. Nothing was said, but everybody was smiling. And I often wonder since then, when we've been out on the campaign trail electing, seeking votes, fighting elections, gosh, what I would give for a little bit of that stardust to be able to sprinkle around and to bring people with her. But all of that came about through commitment, hard work, dedication. And it's that I took away from my moment, fleeting moment with the Queen. And I do hope that King Charles III brings forward that same dedication, that same commitment, that same hard work, and delivers on his ambitious thoughts, agendas, and objectives for the future of our world, our environment, to tackle climate change and to build a better place for all of us to live and for our children to grow up in. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Nicholson. Councillor Liza.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As we have lost a pillar of Britain, Her Majesty the Queen of England, I would like to tell you a wonderful incident that happened to my parents and myself. Born in Hungary after the war, my late father being in Siberia for 4 years, losing his wife and children, met my mother, who lost as well a child in Auschwitz. I was born after the war in Hungary and moved to Vienna, where I lived to the age of 7. My father became very ill with a lung infection and was hovering between life and death. Then there was a shortage of medicine in Vienna. We got to know that Her Majesty the Queen informed the British Embassy that anyone in need of urgent medication would be granted immediate entry to the UK. There were about 10 families that were granted, and we came over to Britain. This was in 1956. My father was healed with the medication, and my late mother opened a Jewish restaurant, which supported the needs of all communities, and whenever there was a function for the poor and needy, there was always a large discount applied. Then she got a call from Buckingham Palace if she could cater for the chief rabbi in Buckingham Palace, which he agreed. When she was asked for the bill, she said it was £5. After receiving the check, she didn't cash the check. And Buckingham Palace phoned, why wasn't the check cashed? She answered that this was in gratitude that Her Majesty the Queen let us into Britain. Madam Speaker, I've had a wonderful 8 years of school, followed by 7 years in college. I brought up my children and grandchildren to admire our Queen, who should always be an example of kindness and strength for Britain. It is in her merit that we are in Britain. 2 years ago, at the age of 72, I was asked, why would I want to become a councillor? I answered once again, in gratitude to Her Majesty allowing us to live in the UK. If I can help anybody, that would be my greatest wish. May her soul rest in peace and be an example to King Charles III. God save the King. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Isla. Are there any other members of the council who wish to speak? Yeah, Councillor Lynch, Councillor Moema, Councillor Steinberger, Councillor Lynch, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I've just been reflecting on other members' speeches this evening, and I was sort of wanted to speak, and then sort of thought, oh, maybe it wouldn't be appropriate, or I sometimes get nervous on such occasions. But I was remembering that I was actually very fortunate to have met Her Majesty the Queen when I was in the very privileged position to have been the Deputy Mayor in 2010 in the London Borough of Tower Hamlets. And those that know me know that I love my dogs. And I always remember sort of nervously waiting to welcome. I was very, very privileged that the then Mayor, Civic Mayor of the borough, allowed me to have the great honour to welcome, as the first citizen of the borough at the time, to welcome the Queen to Tower Hamlets. And I always remember patiently waiting for her to come, and her beautiful car arrived. And I just suddenly had this image. People will know that I'm very visual and I have quite an interesting imagination, that when the doors opened, all these corgis were going to run out. And obviously, for my disappointment, lots of corgis didn't come out, and the Queen came, and I knew how to curtsy. And I was just reflecting on what Councillor Nicholson was just saying, is that she was an absolute superstar, and there was this stardust, and she came, and it was incredible to have met her. And then she just sort of said a few words to me and moved on. And I think also I was just so touched by what Councillor Joseph, Councillor Connie said regarding respect for the Queen. And I think there's something that I've held very clearly this week around my privilege to be representing the residents of Homerton Ward, and also being somebody who's representing the London Borough of Hackney as well, and how we have our duty as well to represent everybody, but particularly in these times of great sadness, and the ability to act appropriately and to honour and represent my residents appropriately. And just one more final thing, just picking up on what Councillor Woodley said as well, is that I think, particularly for me, I've had, unfortunately, quite a lot of losses in my life. And I think for me, the Queen was there when my dad was alive. He was there when my nanas and my granddads were alive. And I think it's brought a lot for people to think about how the Queen, for me, was always there, even in good times and bad times. And I just wanted to reflect that, because I am mindful that there's probably not just myself and other people in this chamber, and also throughout Hackney, that this loss may be a little bit more unexpected than we thought it would be, even though we did know. But thank you, and thank you very much to you, Madam Speaker, and to the officers as well for handling this so well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lynch. Councillor Moema.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wasn't intending to speak today, but I actually just wanted to thank everybody here who's reflected on the loss that we've had of Her Majesty the Queen. And in particular, I just wanted to also share the fact that I'm really touched over the last few days by not just the issues of service, but actually I think the more human aspect of something we don't talk about much in politics or in public service, around love of country, community, or people. And I think for me, what has really touched me, and I was particularly moved by Councillor Woodley's sharing of her experiences in the last few days, is that this was a woman who loved very passionately. She was with her husband, her partner for over 70 years. I share this just because I am late here today, but I spent my day with my mother who had been with her partner for 50 years. And we have all lost so many things in the last few years. And I just think that whether or not we are dissenters, whether we are politically opposed or in favor of the monarchy, I am somebody who holds institutions really closely and really dearly. And I think whether it is a strong partnership, whether it is service to our communities, as we're all here to do, we must really never let go of that. And I was really also had the privilege, along with Mayor Glanville, to be at City Hall the other day to listen to the leaders of those institutions, people of faith and of none, who talked about the service that they feel towards the communities that they represent. And I just wanted us to, in what may come forward with the new king, to really hold on to, I guess, that point about loving what we do and why we are here, and remembering every day that, I guess, you know, this moment of mourning, grief is the price that we pay for loving something dearly. So I really hope we hold on to that.
Thank you, Councillor Moyama. Councillor Steinberger.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wasn't going to speak today because I felt that it's all of our losses, and I'm the usual suspect, always talking. And I thought it would be good to hear other people, to hear what they have to say. However, when I found out today there's such a thing as being yes for the monarch or not for the monarch, I just don't understand this whole thing. To me, in 1977, first of all, I don't feel fit really to be giving my condolence, because the Queen was a special person, and I don't know if I'm the right person to be given condolence. However, I will speak the little bit I can and give my last respect to the Queen. In 1977, there was the Silver Jubilee, and we all had the privilege of going down to Alexandra Palace, the whole school. And I remember there was this song, "Are You Going to the Silver Jubilee?" And this was a song which nearly, I could say 45 years later, is still every day in my mind. The emotions, seeing the Queen, seeing the person who the whole world looks up to. When I used to go to America, to Israel, to Poland, the first thing was always mentioned about the Queen. So I just want to say, this last week for me has been, since Thursday, has been like a shock. Like many councillors have said today, it's not just like losing the Queen. This feels like losing somebody, like a mother, who basically has made us all proud of our country. And I feel very emotional about it. And I went down to Buckingham Palace just 2 nights ago to pay my respect. It's beyond to me. I don't think this gap can be filled. You know, obviously, we're going to have now the king, but 70 years of service. It's like the mayor said, there was like, I can't even remember the figures, how many prime ministers she's been seeing. Now, just 2 days ago, the latest prime minister went, not 2 days ago, beg your pardon, last Tuesday, the prime minister went down there, obviously to become prime minister. Who would dream 2 days later we will be talking about not having our Queen anymore? And just by finishing off, I believe this picture that we have here in the chamber was Joe Lowenstein's job to make sure that we have this. And I hope that it's still going to be up, because it means a lot to me, the Queen. And I just
Thank
feel
you,
very emotional about the
Councillor
whole thing,
Steinberger.
and what she's done for the whole England and for the whole world. I don't think anybody can do it. So I just want to pay
Thank
my
you.
respect, and may her soul rest in peace.
Thank you,
Madam
Councillor
Speaker.
Steinberger. Mayor Glanville, do you wish to reply?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. I think that was quite an emotional speech, Councillor Steinberger. and not quite where I was going to start off in my response. But I suppose what we've seen, I think, is the resonance that the Queen's had for all of us in this chamber, and all of the diverse responses that I signalled we would have. And I think we have done her proud, we have done our dissenters proud, and we've done the borough proud in our memories. I really do welcome Councillor Levy back to the chamber, and it was lovely to get your message after the proclamation and your really powerful words. Councillor Garbutt, I think you're right in bringing us that sense of broader loss, and for the people of Pakistan, the floods that they have been through, the need for humanitarian response and to care, the loss of Chris Carber and his family, Councillor Jana Thomas, and our Chief Executive in the Community Resilience Partnership tomorrow will be leading a moment's silence for all of those that have been lost to violence on London streets in recent weeks. And there were significant funerals this weekend for others. Deputy Mayor Bramble, I think bringing your own faith and passion for family to the chamber was really powerful, and I know that you'll be a significant part of our service of remembrance on Sunday at St John of Hackney. Councillor Samatar, I knew you would bring, or hoped someone would bring, that sense of what citizenship means, and that actually being a subject can be a unifying and an equalising sense, not an exclusionary one. And I think we saw that from as well from Ogun Muron's statement as well, and about that sense of mother for the nation and different traditions of royalty within our Commonwealth and nation. I think all of those comments about how it reopens old wounds, as Councillor Woodley, and fresh wounds around loss, really powerfully made. And I saw on social media so many people having stepped back because of their sense of loss, especially of mothers and grandmothers and aunts and significant women in their lives. And I hope if people are going through that in this chamber or beyond, that they can turn to their friends and colleagues and seek that solace, because it must be an incredibly difficult time. Councillor Suso Range, reading Councillor Root's words, again, that point about feminism and actually the Queen as a feminist icon that is often not recognised, and was very powerfully said. Councillor Billington, I think you did our dissenters justice, but also what modern monarchy can be if it's done right, and why dissent is an absolute part of what we believe in this chamber and the values that we have, and we obviously look to the King and hope he lives up to those. Councillor Race, you picked up a visit that I did not mention, but also that deep affection that Hoxton East had during the Platinum Jubilee, but also that sense of fun and bringing together that Jubilee allows us to do. Thank you as well, Councillor Lynch, for speaking so powerfully about an experience of meeting the Queen. Councillor Ette and Councillor Jana Thomas also brought those memories. I think the resonance of that 1947 statement came across from so many people in this chamber, including Councillor Desmond as well, talking about modern Britain and the changes that the Queen has seen. Councillor, Deputy Mayor Nicholson, that sense of joy, and I think, you know, that is something that no elected politician can ever bring to the streets of London, and I think we'll deeply miss that in the Queen. Councillor Lissa, I hope in our conversation and the contribution that you made, I think it's incredibly powerful, that message and that connection to Jewish refugees and others, and what solace and sanctuary means to this country, and the Crown's relationship to that. Councillor Marima, in channeling City Hall and those powerful words, but also that unifying sense of loss that others in the chamber have mentioned, again powerful. And I suppose I finish with that point about the price of love and the emotion that Councillor Steinberger brought to us. I hope, Deputy Lieutenant, we have done the Queen proud. I'm going to hand over to you through Madam Speaker, and I hope that you take our messages of condolence to the royal family, the Queen, and our best wishes for the King from this chamber in your office. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, Mayor Glanville, thank you very much. It's been a very emotional evening tonight, and I've heard so many things from you that have really struck me very, very strongly. I think that sense of loss that we all feel, and you may have different views about the monarchy, but that sense of loss struck us all, I think. I've seen it in my family remembering people that we've lost. My first sight of the Queen was in my little village in Suffolk when she came through in a car, and huge crowds were on the pavements wanting to welcome her. And then my brother, who was the first in my family to go to university and was working the holiday on a building site out of the village, suddenly came down on his old ramshackle bike down the hill, huge ovations from the waiting crowds. So that was my first experience of Her Majesty, and it's one that I will remember, and I feel a sense of loss for my brother at that point, because he died as well, sadly too young. You've had wonderful and heartfelt contributions to this meeting, and it's been a great honour to join you in expressing my condolences to His Majesty King Charles III and the royal family. It was an event that we thought would happen, but when it did, it shocked us. And I think many of us will remember exactly where we were at that moment when we heard the news. And it's particularly poignant that it was mentioned that she'd only just said goodbye to one Prime Minister and welcomed another. It seemed as she was there in our lives. And actually, that's one of the things that I feel. I think, she was there. Actually, I'm old enough to have been alive when there was a king. Before this one, and she's been there all my life, and she felt as if she was part of my family. And I think lots of people in this country have felt that. She was a constant presence on our banknotes, on our coins, on our stamps, on our televisions, and we felt in some strange way that we knew her. I never met her. I have to say that I did meet, I've met a couple of times, King Charles, and on both occasions I've been incredibly impressed with him. He came to the opening of a housing scheme that I was involved in, and he really brought life to that housing scheme. It was for young people, trying to get them into somewhere to live and into employment. And the crowds just came. And at that moment, and it's some years ago now, I thought, actually, if there wasn't a monarchy, we'd need to invent one to play that part in our society. So I'd like to take this opportunity not just to thank you for what you've said today, but also to thank you for what you did to celebrate Her Majesty's Jubilee. It was a really joyous occasion in the borough, and you did huge amounts, and that is obviously being fed back to her. It was fed back to the royal family and the royal household about what you've done. But it was evident that your community in Hackney felt huge love for our Queen. And not only did they show that respect, but they had great fun over that time. And your council did her proud through that. Her service, you mentioned her service, it was immense and selfless. And it was said that she didn't choose her life. And indeed, King Charles hasn't chosen his life. But it was more, you could say she didn't have a choice, but it was more than that. She took it up with alacrity and commitment right to the very end. Some of us have been able to retire, but she couldn't. And she went right through to the end doing her duty. We're very sad to lose her. She was a unifying force at some point. I think of her about Northern Ireland. I think about her in terms of Grenfell. What she brought to that community, hit by the fire, was enormous. And then her broadcast during the COVID that has been referred to, we will meet again. And we have, but in a sad time. So we're sad to have lost our dear Queen, but our constitution goes on, and we now have King Charles III. He will do this role in a different way, but he'll do it in a way that I'm sure that we can all be proud of. You've mentioned his love of the environment, and that's very important, and his commitment to young people through the Prince's Trust has also been referred to, so thank you. We saw what he will be like when he addressed the nation on Friday evening. Madam Speaker, I should like to end by thanking you and the London Borough of Hackney for what you have said tonight, but also the way you organised the proclamation on Sunday. You have done the people of the borough and of the country proud in the way that you've marked this. It's striking for me that I sat here only last Wednesday afternoon and sang with the newest citizens of this borough and this country, God Save the Queen. Little did we know, they sang it enthusiastically. They were so pleased to take that oath. It was a very moving occasion, and it's just shocking, really, that this has happened so soon after that. Mr. Mayor, I will write to Sir Edward Young, KCVO, who's the private secretary he was the private secretary to the Queen, and probably is private secretary to the King now, at Buckingham Palace, and tell him about what you have said tonight, about what you did at the proclamation and how well you handled that, but also how you celebrated the Jubilee. Thank you very much, everyone, for asking me to come tonight. Madam Speaker, Mr. Mayor, councillors, officers of the council, thank you so much. God save the King.
Thank you, Deputy Lieutenant Stephen Howlett. I also want to thank Swami Jamurti from the temple at the back for also attending tonight. We have now come to the end of the agenda, and I declare this meeting closed. Thank you for your attendance.